Regular season is over and it's time for playoffs to start in Texas high school football. Hello everyone and welcome back to Football Fever here on LISD TV, your source for high school football here on the South Plains. Travis Cram, and the man to my left is none other than the president of the high school Tundra, George Watson of the Lubbock Avalanche-Journal.
Can I call the Secret Service in? Do I get any of that stuff?
This is your Oval Office.
This is my Oval Office? Okay, well, you know, it could be worse, I guess.
That's right, that's right. Well, before we get into the bi-district round of the first round of the playoffs, let's take a look back at this past week. It all started Thursday night with the Sandies taking on the Westerners of Lubbock High out at Lowry Field, and not a pretty one for Lubbock High in the finale of the season.
No, not really. You know, it's one of those games that it's basically left to play for pride, and you know, not that saying that Lubbock High didn't come out, but Amarillo did come out more focused, and you know, they had something to play for. They're in the playoffs, but they're also trying to improve their seeding. They're trying to improve their ability going into the playoffs, get a little bit of momentum, and they certainly did that. Just overmatched Lubbock High in kind of in all areas. You know, Lubbock High is, you know, just a lot of the same, you know, that we've talked about all year. Their depth, you know, it was a concern. You know, and it just really kind of played out. You know, Amarillo plays very, very good fundamental defense. You know, I was going back looking through some of the stats. You know, going back, you know, as far as these teams, you know, there's only one team in the district that finished that allowed under 300 yards a game defensively in the regular season. That was Amarillo, and they certainly showed that the other night. A good showing by Amarillo, you know, being able to run the football, and they just, you know, were able to push Lubbock High up and down the field all on Thursday night.
Yeah, that locks up the second spot out of 2-5A for Amarillo. Another game going on in the Lubbock schools, the rivalry, Coronado taking on Monterey, a huge offensive shootout a year ago. This one looked like it was going to be the complete opposite, dominated by Monterey early. Then Coronado comes back, scores those 21 unanswered points to win the game.
Yeah, it was a completely, you know, different game from first half to second half. Two completely different teams out there. Like you said, Monterey, the first half, was able to run the football, establish that early, was able to get that going, got a couple of field goals out of Philip Armendariz, and they're sitting there at 20-0, and Coronado really hadn't shown anything, you know, that entire first half as far as being able to be competitive in this football game. You know, they go in at halftime. I don't know what was said, but, you know, things just completely flipped. You know, Monterey's, you know, first drive stalls out. Coronado's able to stop that. Then Coronado gets its first touchdown, and suddenly you can kind of feel them relax a little bit. They get a second touchdown, and they're all right. They're back in this ball game. They get a perfectly executed pooch kick from Joey Alexander, recover that football right there on the sidelines, take that in, score. Suddenly it's 21-20, and Coronado just has complete control of this game, and they never let it go. Two completely different halves, two completely different teams. I know Monterey was disappointed in their second half. Coronado was disappointed in their first half. The difference was, you know, scoring touchdowns instead of field goals again. It's kind of what Monterey had been known for the last, you know, 3 or 4 weeks of the regular season. You know, they get some chances inside the red zone. They have to settle for field goals. They look good at the time, but then they end up coming back and biting them. So, yeah, this time a one-point game and just a weird game. You know, something I really didn't expect out of that Monterey-Coronado game. I thought it would be a close game, but I thought it would be a more balanced game between both teams. You know, just not as completely opposite from first half to second half as it was out there.
All right, taking a look at the rest of the scores out of District 2-5A. San Angelo Central wins their second game in a row to end the season. Nice roll to get on moving into next year. They win 29-20 over Tascosa. Permian wins a big one over Midland, 35-31. That just matters for playoff seasons. That knocks Midland out completely. And Lee wins their final one over Odessa, who wins the district, 21-14. So you look at the standings now, and you got Odessa winning the district at 8-1. Then follow that up with Amarillo, Permian, and Midland Lee. Now that win means a lot. Those, you know, now they're lucky that that loss didn't mean too much 2 weeks ago to where they still make the playoffs. But you look at these other teams from Lubbock, they're going to all miss the playoffs again this year, second year in a row for Monterey. What do they have to take from this season heading into next year? Who do you think has the most to play with going into next season?
Well, I think each one of them have a little bit to build on going into next season. You mentioned Monterey. I think they're kind of a work in progress right now. You know, that the first year of that new spread offense, you know, toward the end of the season they were really executing it pretty well. But like we said, you know, sometimes having to settle for field goals instead of touchdowns. That's one thing that they've really got to emphasize, I think, in the offseason is being able to finish drives, and when they're inside the red zone, being able to go ahead and punch it in, because we know that could have made the difference in probably about 3 or 4 of their football games in terms of them maybe winning or losing, or at least having a chance to win at the end. You know, their defense, I think, was okay. I think they've got to find some improvement there, but they're going to have to, you know, fill some holes going into next year. There's a lot of key guys that are going to be back, but some guys guys, like a Sam Teague that ran that offense very well, running the football, are going to be gone. They're going to have to fill his spot. But I think they've also got to find some way to throw the ball a little better. At times, teams were able to kind of stack up against them and stack up against the run and not worry about the pass. So Monterey, I think, has a lot to work through. But I think they've got some good building blocks going into the season. When you talk about Coronado, I think Coronado is going to have some talent coming back next year. They were very young in a lot of their skill positions, especially in their wide receivers. The thing that I think really made them a different ball club, and you could see it when they had a guy like Cameron Owens in there running the football. They were a much better team. They were a much more balanced team, and they were able to play with a lot of the top dogs in that district. When he was out with injury, they struggled. So I don't know if it's maybe they have to find a different quarterback. Well, they're going to have to find a different quarterback. Rick Henderson's graduating, so they'll have a different quarterback. I don't know if they need a more athletic quarterback. Of course, guys like Austin Zuzalik only come along every once in a while. So, but they've also got to find a running game. If they can find a quarterback that can get it to those receivers on a consistent basis and find a running game that can complement that, I think they'll be okay. They played very good defense. And I think they set a good tone for defense for the next few years. When you look at Lubbock High, it's kind of more of the same. They're going to have to battle depth. They're going to have to battle injuries. Now, the thing that might help Lubbock High, and the thing that might actually help all three of these schools, is realignment coming along. When you talk about that, the numbers that were turned in back in October, we're talking 2154, I think, for Lubbock High, 2186, if I'm not mistaken, for Coronado, 2187 for Monterey. Might be switched. I got to look those up. But what that does is, if the UIL continues to raise that bottom number, then you're going to look at Lubbock High maybe dropping down to 4A, Coronado, and Monterey maybe both. If they raise it a little higher, maybe to 2200, both of those are going to drop down to 4A. I think what that's going to do is for Lubbock High, it's going to help them because we talk all the time about their numbers and them really playing with 3A numbers. Well, if they're able to drop down to 4A, I think they'll be a little bit more competitive with some of the teams around here. So, and it could help with Coronado, Monterey too. I think the dynamic of 5A and 4A is going to change. Maybe not drastically, but I think it's going to start to change when realignment comes along, and I think that's going to affect each one of the current 5A Lubbock schools.
All right, one school that had to experience that this past 2 years, Estacado, they dropped from 4A to 3A for the first time in a long time. But now you see this success that's come along this season. Playing Borger this past week, share the district title on the line, and we knew about this offense, what they've been doing over the last 4 games, winning all these games, but now you saw that defense show some resiliency. That's a good sign, I think, for Savannah heading into the playoffs.
I think you're right. You talk about the offense, looked it up yesterday, in this 4-game win streak in district, they've been averaging 270 yards a game offensively on the ground, just on the ground. That's not total. They've been averaging well over about 3 during that span and been getting some good balance. But like you said, they're also playing some good defense. They started slow Friday night against Borger, tough on the road, but you could kind of see that progression from that first week when they went to Perryton. It was kind of the same thing. They started slow and weren't able to pick it up. They were able to pick it up in the second half, especially with the running game. Augustina Biggity absolutely running wild right now, averaging over 120, 130 yards a game. He is really becoming a force, and now they get to go up against Abilene Wiley. And the interesting deal here is Abilene Wiley is probably not going to be 100%. Their quarterback, Matt Preston, suffered a sprained ligament in his knee a couple weeks ago. Probably will not play. Could play, but from all indications, probably will not play. So, they went up against Wiley last year. Wiley was an outstanding team, and it was a 21-10 game, so that could make a difference. Going back to the same venue, the same time, the same day as it was last year. We'll see how that affects, coming up later in the show.
All right, so like I said, because of that win, that gives them a tie for the district title with Borger. We'll take a look at who they're going to play in the bi-district round. Moving on to the rest of that district, Cooper ending their season. They ended in a good fashion, 48-14 over Levelland. That's a big win for the Pirates. Gives Wyndham a little bit of momentum going into next year.
Yeah, a little bit, and they're going to be young again. They're going to have some of that talent back. If they, they'll get Tay Richardson back, and hopefully they can keep him healthy. That kid just, was, constantly injured from one thing to the next all season long. They're going to have some solid kids coming back, and that's the deal. They're going to have to build some depth. because they were just racked by injuries this year. If they can stay healthy next year, maybe it's just one of those years where it all hits in 1 year. Maybe next year they stay healthy, and we'll see if they can get back on top in 1-3A.
Going into Class 4A now, and of course Friendship, they have been put against the wall. You maybe thought the Tigers were done this season. Nope. They win their final game to stay in this thing.
Well, and that's the thing. They were down to their final 2 quarters because it was a 12-7 game. Lakeview was leading at halftime. And I asked Brad Davis, I'm sure, what was said in the locker room at halftime. And he kind of chuckled and said what wasn't said in the locker room at halftime, or who didn't speak. Coaches spoke, seniors spoke, players spoke, everybody just to get fired up. And it worked because they came out and scored 22 unanswered points in the second half and won 29-12 and going away. And now they're in the playoffs. And that may be the thing now that Friendship's kind of in the playoffs, now that they've had that one good half where Brad Davis said that he felt like they really got into a rhythm for maybe the first time in all district play. Now they go into the playoffs with a little bit of momentum. They get a familiar opponent in Paladuro, but an opponent I think they could probably beat. Then you get an El Paso team in the second round. So for everything that Friendship's gone through, if things keep going right from this game, they're 3 rounds. They could be 3 rounds deep in the playoffs again, and all that stuff, all the struggling they had in the district season, will probably be a forgotten thing.
All right, going on to District 3-2A now, and Littlefield taking on Post. Wildcats looking to win that district again, outright for the 2nd season in a row. They get it done. You got to give it to Hughesman's group because they showed a lot of things this year for a team that we thought might be a little depleted.
Yeah, they show a lot of things. They show a lot of heart, and they show a lot of depth because they're playing this game without Patrick Barrio. He's out with a knee injury. Probably will be out this week as well. But, you got guys like Thomas Richardson and guys like that, Tracy Hughesman at quarterback, Will McDowell running the football and doing a lot of things on defense. And I think their depth is really starting to show late in the season. They had a lot of guys step up in this game, in a tough situation against a very good Post team running the football. They played outstanding offense. They played outstanding defense. And credit Post, too, because, they held a Littlefield team that had been charging through everybody else, held them to 18 points. So, Post showed me a lot as well. Very well could have won that football game. I think those are 2 very good teams going into the postseason. I would not be surprised if either one of those end up, 3 or 4 rounds deep in the playoffs this year.
Sticking with Class 2A now, in 2-2A, Muleshoe taking on Friona. They win that one 28-21. The Mules win their 2nd straight 2-2A title. 2nd straight regular season undefeated for David Wood in that group. We've said it all along. You just throw in another quarterback, and I guess the system works out there.
Well, I guess so. You're talking 25 straight now. The clock keeps counting on that, but credit Friona. I thought Friona was going to give Muleshoe a bit of a tussle, and they did. It was 14-7 game, I think, at halftime. Ended up being a 28-21 game. So I think Friona showed me a lot as far as their abilities, going into the playoffs. But yeah, credit Muleshoe. They just kind of plug the holes and keep going, and now they go into the playoffs, and they've got a River Road team in the first round. And I think the thing about Division I and Class 1A is Bushland, because that River Road win over Sanford Fritch, Bushland gets knocked down to Division II. So now I think Littlefield and Muleshoe both have an excellent chance. Whichever one may meet in that second round, whichever one comes out of that, may end up having a good shot at getting back at least maybe to the state semis or even farther than that.
All right, when we come back, George is going to introduce you to a Tiger that's been running wild. Our AJ Player of the Week is next on The Fever.